Production funding for Arts Upload has been provided in part by Muriel McBrien Kaufman Foundation, Hall Family Foundation, Francis Family Foundation, the Hartwig Family, Courtney S. Turner Charitable Trust, and viewers like you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Randy Mason.
And I'm Vanessa Severo, filling in the next few weeks for Maris Aylward.
Our show's called Arts Upload, and this week we're here at the Arabia Steamboat Museum
To steer you towards stories about fiber art the City Girl way.
plus another favorite fountain and a guy who just loves playing the drums.
All that and more ahead on The Upload. The first thing to know about City Girl Farm is that it's not actually a farm.
But it does yield something you might find in a barnyard, and no, it's not a cow.
The City Girl Farm is a place from which chicken footstools emerge.
And they don't go for chicken feed either. They're serious pieces of fiber art, probably best described simply by showing you.
I'm really in the finishing process of this chicken, just going around and making all the final passes. And Mom is working on basting on her chicken and making sure everything's covered. Oh, and you got a head on? Great.
Yep, poultry parts, being, for lack of a better term, upholstered, inside a small storefront just west of the Country Club Plaza, by the mother-daughter team that's at the heart of the City Girl Farm.
Mom gets a lot of credit for being involved from birth on creatively. So yeah, I grew up on a farm in central Kansas in Lyons, and I was given the gift of chickens, I think sometime in middle school. And so I had a lot of happy childhood chicken experiences and loved collecting the eggs and just watching them around the farm. And I think they're so ridiculous and quirky and unique, each chicken, that they make me feel better about my own quirks and uniquenesses.
The story moves on to Sally's graduate studies at Kansas State, where she majored in interior architecture. Inspired by the French artist Francois Lalonde's sheep footstools, she introduced a product of her own.
Penny and Penny were the result of a semester of designing how to make a chicken, what's the essence of a chicken, what parts need to be there. And I was honestly just hoping that they would stand up.
They stood, and an idea was hatched. Teaming one newly minted college graduate with her mom's skills at the spinning wheel and her father's abilities to build. The first chickens were white and basic. They sold. So did the next batch, and the next, as have the increasingly not found in nature varieties which continue to emerge.
We create our own rule. We'll look at each other and we're like, there's nobody to ask. We have to solve this, and we may do it wrong, we may do it right, and we're just taking that risk. One of the first shows we went to, there was somebody that looked in our booth and they said, "Are you taxidermists?" They looked at it, they knew it was a chicken, their minds told them. Then the second later they realized, oh, well, there's no chickens that big running around any farmyard. But it was the scale of it that she created that I think made it real, but yet they knew they weren't real. So it was a real play on, you know, what their mind and their eyes were telling them at the same time.
Our goal is always to create a chicken, but the way that we get to the end result is always changing based on the fiber, based on the feather making processes, and then what we pin on the chicken and how we decide to stitch it.
So far, the roughly 500 chickens that have gone out the door have at least one thing in common. They're sturdily constructed, with bronze legs and beaks and a solid wooden egg at the core. They are, after all, footstools. Expensive footstools that take weeks to create.
People will say, I wouldn't buy this and put my feet up on it. Or they ask us, do people use it that way? And we're like, we really have no idea. It's up to them, you know, but they are engineered as a footstool, and the price is, you know, reflects that. We did recognize kind of a couple years ago that these chickens were going to some pretty cool homes. And I was starting to get a little jealous. There's one we know of that has the view of the Pacific Ocean every single day, and I'm thinking that isn't quite fair.
While there may not be an ocean view here, Susan does get to see something that many parents would envy her for. Her daughter, nearly every day as they tackle this task for which there is no manual.
I don't know, somehow our differences and our strengths have made this work. As long as I don't comment about her hair or what she's wearing.
Okay.
We have a similar work ethic. I think that's really big. We will push and put in, you know, to the midnight hour without even questioning it. And that's hard to find people, pay people to put in that kind of, you know, effort.
Except perhaps for this group of chickeners.
Project for so long.
Among them, you'll find architects, nurses, students, and friends, even friends of friends. They come together nearly every week for conversation and camaraderie, some snacks, and no matter what their sewing skills may be, to play some small role in the unfolding tale of City Girl Farm.
They do get compensated for their stitches. We do our best to decide how much of a chicken they've stitched and then pay them accordingly.
So what
Yeah,
I'm trying to
where are
do
we at?
is Sally is very good at directing and teaching, but then she allows you to have like flexibility and your own creative look on things, and that's I think how you can get so much. And then if you're nervous, she's like, no, you're doing such a good job, and she's just very positive, which I think is great. You get her today.
It's tempting to say that the chicks are in charge, and apparently I just did, but there are guys involved at the farm too, including Dave in the back room. He's the designated felter, transforming raw fibers like wool into fabric using the powers of water and heat in a process that falls somewhere between science and magic.
Look at that.
Then there's John, recently added to the CGF team to help Sally keep a more vigilant eye on those pesky numbers.
Definitely learning more this year, particularly about the business end of things, which was not my forte, never has been, but I'm learning a lot. So it's a beautiful mix of like production that needs to happen and just wanting to protect the culture of flexibility and spontaneity and creativity in the making.
We never get bored. I mean, it's like, you know, we'll look at each other and just kind of, really? You know, we get to do this?
We're having a lot of fun, and I'm really, really thankful for the idea and just the joy and delight that they seem to spread into the world.
Here on Arts Upload, we like to say we're out to prove Kansas City is America's creative crossroads.
But it's also still the city of fountains, which we think they kind of go together.
That's why we created My Favorite Fountain, where people tell us about the one they particularly like, and then Dave Burkhart goes out and shoots pictures of it.
This week, newscaster Laura Moritz explains why the Firefighters Memorial Fountain means so much to her.
This is my favorite fountain in the city because to me it speaks to me and it makes me reflect and just find a place of gratitude for our public servants. 31st and Broadway is always busy, yet this place with the water and the firefighters is a place of calm. You see a fire truck and you may even be irritated if they're going on a call, but you come here and it makes you realize how intent and how determined they are to keep you and your family and your home safe. I think that's a lesson that I learned as a little kid when we had our family barn burned down. And I remember as a little girl watching these big firefighters in all their garb go running into our barn to save our animals. It never dawned on me that they could be hurt or they could die doing that. On that night in October of 2015, when Larry Leggio and John Mesh died, Chris Ketz and I were on the set. We'd been covering the fire. We learned, as we're covering this on set, that they had passed away. It was a heartbreaker. Knowing how everybody reacted and felt so deeply, I think that the community, the firefighters and the community as a whole, needed to have something that was permanent, and this fountain is permanent. And when you think about it, I mean, how beautiful is the fact that you have two firefighters determining, in my mind, how they're going to attack this fire, and you have water, their greatest weapon, all around them. I think that if you come here and if you just pause, you will reflect on how firefighters try and keep us safe and keep us alive. And I don't think anyone could not walk by and stop and not think about firefighters.
All right, that particular fountain, like most, is turned off for the winter. But hey, positive thoughts for warmer days ahead.
And speaking of the future, next week on Arts Upload, we'll share a story about how the UMKC Conservatory gets ready for the big Crescendo program.
And judging from what you're about to see, they also do a good job teaching media and filmmaking.
It's a student-made project about Arnie Young, a jazz drummer we often see quite a bit of around Mardi Gras time.
All right, let me see what I can do with the names. Julian Schempf is the director-editor, working along with Kyle Wambledorf and Justin Longmire.
Young. I played drums and cymbals and other various instruments, percussion, flute. Mainly that's just for composing. That's how I compose. But mainly I play the drum set, which consists of drums and cymbals. It's called the drums, but it's really the drums and cymbals. Cymbals a big part of it. I'm from Paola, Kansas. That's it. That's where I'm from. You know, I moved here when I was 17, so, man, during the time I've been here ever since then, that was like 1963. You know, and like, but in that time I've also spent about 12 or 13 years in other cities. Like I lived in San Francisco for 8 years, I lived in New York for a couple of years, I lived in LA a little bit, you know, I've moved around. You know, so, but I end up back here. It's kind of like a whirlpool or something, I don't know. And I've been here 27 years now, this last stretch. I started playing professionally when I was about, I guess I was 15 then. And I played in terrible bars out in Kansas. There was a guy my stepdad knew who was a guitar player, and he'd come pick me up. And I had a pituitary deficiency, so I looked like I was like 7 or 8 years old, even though I was in high school. And I'd go play in these horrible dives out in Kansas, just terrible. I mean, biker bars and stuff. Well, my style is also, it's a group effort, you know, it's not just me. It's like I have a group with really great musicians, and they're not necessarily jazz musicians per se. Some of them are, some of them aren't. Some of them go out and play straight-ahead jazz gigs. Other guys don't. Like Patrick Alonzo Smith Conway is this fantastic musician. Now, he's not a jazz guy, but he plays alto sax in my band. Now he's playing bassoon, too, through effects, man. It's awesome. And then, he happens to be the best conga player, Afro-Cuban conga player in Kansas City. So we have percussion in my group. Sometimes the whole group, my group's called the Rough Tet. We're dedicated to rough jazz. We don't like smooth jazz. We think jazz should be rough. And it's not just jazz oriented. We use a lot of different kinds of music in our music. Like sometimes we might all be on percussion. Sometimes we might all be on bamboo flutes. So we use traditional non-Western instruments. But mainly we use and we got a guy that does electronic music. See, that's important to me, to have something that fits the sound profile of this time we're living in. I'm not trying to recreate what happened in 1965 or something. That's great. Back then I was, but it's not 1965. If there was even 10 or 20, if you go back and look at the 30s, the heyday of Kansas City jazz, Kansas City was the top place in the nation in the 30s. Swing was invented here. Swing is Kansas City's gift to the world. Today, because of Bobby Watson coming back 16 years ago and taking over the jazz program at UMKC, has become a magnet for all these great young musicians that come here. And guess what? Like, for instance, Ben Lifer, he's one of the finest spaces anywhere, I think. He moved to New York for a year and a half. He didn't like it. He came back and lives here. People are moving here from other towns because the scene is so hot. But what we don't have is clubs. There were 5 jazz clubs. Take 5. There's the Majestic. There's the Blue Room. And there's Green Lady. They have jazz like 7 nights a week, I think, upstairs and down. That's a good thing. And that's really, but then there was Broadway Jazz. That's gone. Take 5's gone. And so there's just nowhere for all these great young musicians to play. It's really tragic. Like I said, if there were 10 jazz clubs in town, even I'd be working. Somebody needs to step up and get some balls and open a couple of jazz clubs. If there were a few more clubs here that had jazz, and there are a few opening up, and it's getting better, but there's just not enough places for all these great young musicians that live here to play. I think jazz is very much alive. It's been shot full of holes for the last 100 and some years, and it's still going, man.
Well, the Arabia Steamboat Museum isn't devoted to art, but I'd say there's an art to the way the Hawley family and their associates put this place together 25 years ago.
Well, first they had to dig up the boat. It was covered under tons of mud, sitting in a field near Parkville, sitting where it sank in 1856 while heading up the mighty Missouri.
The amazing thing is how much of what was on board the Arabia is still intact and so much fun to look at.
The colors and the details on the clothing, a true time capsule. Even some of the canned food was still edible.
Maybe the coolest part of this whole story, they think they've now found another boat, the Malta.
They've run tests and they're encouraged and are hoping to start the big dig, maybe even as soon as this fall.
No doubt about it, this is a true homegrown treasure. So while we're here, we decided to share with you the story of how another city has devised a way to look back at its past.
Old Milwaukee isn't just a yard beer. It's also a very popular exhibit at the Milwaukee History Museum.
This is the streets of Old Milwaukee, and we've been calling it the reimagined streets of Old Milwaukee because we've done a whole lot of new things within it, but it still is fundamentally the old beloved streets of Old Milwaukee. The streets of Old Milwaukee was designed and built 50 years ago. It was the first major exhibition to be put on in the museum's new building here. It was designed by Ed Green, and he's still around, still a Milwaukeean, and It's actually rather rare for an exhibit to last for 50 years, especially one that's as interactive and well used as this one. So the idea that an exhibit would last for 50 years really speaks to the quality of the original design. Whatever we did had to make what was beloved about the streets of Old Milwaukee already deeper, broader, more of what people love the streets of Old Milwaukee for. And from asking both visitors and internal people here, what people love about it is that sense of going back in time. So we wanted to enhance that sense of really being there. So the first major experience that people will have when coming into the exhibition is one of the larger things that we've added. We've added the streetcar that is traveling to Old Milwaukee. And the streetcar starts in the present, and as you walk through it into the exhibit, you're going back in time. This is your time machine. This is your wardrobe to Narnia, if you will. This is the way that people go back in time to experience what Milwaukee was like. There's a rumble underneath the floor. There are buildings going past, and they're getting newer as they go past you. So it's that sense of walking back in time. We wanted to engage all of the senses with our reimagined Streets of Old Milwaukee to enhance that sense of being there, as I've said. We added the smell of fresh baked bread to the bakery. We've added a number of interactive items, things you can put your hands on and interact with. A high-wheel bicycle you can get on and ride. We've repaired the old pump that used to work so it pumps real water again. You can find a little butterfly hidden in the fruit cart and tap its jar to make it fly. All of these little details are to make you feel like you are there, not just looking through the windows. The Nickelodeon now will be open for all of the visitors most of the time. For the general store, we created a glass box inside so you can get really close to the artifacts inside as well. So there's a lot of detail in there for people to find. I'd like to tell everybody that all of your old favorites are still there. It's true, Granny got a little bit of a facelift, 50 years, you know, puts a little wear and tear on just about anybody. But it's the same old Granny rocking on her porch there. And people can still buy candy in the slightly spruced up, but still the old candy shop that everybody loves. So I think everything that we've added is not taking away from what people loved, but just more of it. Well, one last thing I'd love to tell you about this exhibition is that it will change over time. We have numerous stories, numerous characters we want to bring to life. And periodically, the entire streets will change in subtle ways. New movies in the Nickelodeon, new headlines on the newspaper, new sounds that you hear as you go through, supporting new themes. We're starting with the theme of entertainment, but we're going to go on to public health, public safety, immigration, all things which were important to people in Milwaukee of that era and still important to people in Milwaukee. But the most key part of that is going to be an app, a storytelling app where you can follow various characters who are telling their perspective on what it was like to live in Milwaukee at that time through the streets. And it's a very interesting app that people can do. People have told me stories after stories about how, oh, my grandfather used to work at that store, or my great-great-aunt actually donated that particular object. This really is the people's exhibition. There's pieces of them, pieces of their history embedded throughout this exhibit. So there probably isn't another exhibit in the state of Wisconsin that has so much of the public invested directly in it. The museum is engaged right now in reimagining throughout the institution. It's an exciting time here. We're refreshing a lot of different things, rethinking the way that we do it, and listening to the public about what they want to. So I hope people come back again and again to discover what's new at the Milwaukee Public Museum.
Well, while the big wheel keeps on turning here at the Arabia Steamboat Museum, our time this week is pretty much up.
Next week on Arts Upload, among other things, a trip to Hamilton, Missouri.
Home of the crazy successful Missouri Star Quilt Company.
Until then, I'm Vanessa Severo.
And I'm Randy Mason. How about some more chicken footstools?
Production funding for Arts Upload has been provided in part by Muriel McBrien Kaufman Foundation, Hall Family Foundation, Francis Family Foundation, the Hartwig Family, Courtney S. Turner Charitable Trust, and viewers like you. Thank you.